Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help our families that are going through the college planning process to figure this whole thing out. And today we're going to be talking about the new enhanced ACT. It's specifically the reading section. I'm Kristin Clark. I'm a career exploration coach for 16 to 26-year-olds, and I'm here with Bobby Hood, our ACT SAT guru. Bobby, how's life treating you today?
Just great. Yeah, having fun. The ACT is this Saturday again, which is a lot of fun. So I've got students, all preparing and meeting all week, getting ready. And so yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so thought we talked a couple of weeks ago about the new enhanced ACT and how it's changed, and then we also are talking about, like how students can adjust to this new enhanced ACT. And so I thought today we talked a couple weeks ago about like the different changes in the English test. And then we talked about changes in the math test. So today I want to talk about the changes to the reading test. So why don't we just dive in and take a look? Okay. So the first thing is, we talked a couple of weeks ago about how English had changed kind of dramatically on the test. And it was, they took out 25 questions and added extra time and things like that. The reading test has changed a little less. So you can see the very first thing here, right? All they've done is take 4 questions out of the test.
But they gave you more time.
But they added 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's big.
So the big thing with the ACT has always been, particularly in reading and science, that students feel like they're doing pretty well, but then they run out of time. They only get through, like the first time you take it, you might only get through half the test and then realize you're running out of time, right? So adding 5 minutes and taking out 4 questions makes that a little easier, right? But you're still probably going to run out of time the first time. There's also one little weird thing, which is now they aren't counting all of the questions. So each of the passages, there are 4 questions with 4 passages with 9 questions. And one of the 4 is not going to count.
But you don't know which one it is?
You don't know which one, right?
Okay.
Now they have said it's probably going to be passage 2 or 3.
But that's still pretty vague.
Right. But so what this does mean is, like, because it would be rewarding students who don't finish if you don't count the 4th passage, right? So one thing is, if you are going to run out of time, do passage 1 and then passage 4 and then work on passages 2 or 3. But regardless, if you use these strategies I'm talking about, you won't run out of time anyway, right? So this is the same strategy that we've always had on the ACT, right? Which is,
now you've always had it, but that doesn't mean that everybody's always had this.
Absolutely, right. These are the same strategies that I've always advised. And I think you might realize, like, students come in and they think that they're supposed to read really carefully up front and understand everything, right? But if you do that, you find yourself zoning out. You realize you're staring at a paragraph and you haven't really read anything. You're going back and rereading. But then when you finally finish, you do well on the questions, you feel like, but then suddenly you're out of time, right?
Yep.
When you're only halfway through. And that's because that reading in detail doesn't help. It doesn't work, right? It wastes too much time, right? Because if you spent, say, these, a passage that's like 5 long paragraphs, well, that's going to take you 4 or 5 minutes to read probably.
Yep.
Right. And if you spend 5 minutes reading each of the passages, well, then that's 20 minutes and you haven't gotten any points, right? And so what you want to do is you still want to read in detail, just not up front like that, because that gets you focused on things that are like not the important thing. Instead, all you need to do up front is just look through the passage and see where things are, right? Like, okay, they're talking about this over here and this over there. And the reason this works is the reading test is just a big, dumb word search puzzle. Does that make any sense?
No, it totally does. Because, well, part of it, because you and I've done this before.
Sure.
But yeah, when you're kind of just trying to scan through and find certain words and look at the sentences around those, it makes it much easier.
Absolutely, right? And so once you realize that it is a word search puzzle, this really helps students who have dyslexia, who have ADHD, right? Because it turns it into kind of a game. And even if you have dyslexia and words don't sometimes look like the letters are backwards or things like that, well, the same words still are going to look like the same words regardless, right? And so that's part of the trick.
And I like this idea of too, if you don't like the passage, like I've read some of those, I remember reading some of those, Bobby, and they'd be like, and the, you know, Egyptian da 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 da. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not interested in this at all. Right.
Absolutely. That's the thing, right? Start with the ones that look like they're easier to read. Now, one thing that's nice about the ACT is the passages are written at kind of an 8th grade reading level, but still sometimes the topic is boring. I mean, it still kind of can be very boring, right? It's just not like it's not necessarily that hard to read, but yeah, like sometimes the science ones can have a lot of science words in them that can be a little, right?
Yep.
And then of course, if you're taking the paper test, which I do recommend, you can still take it in paper or electronic form. Just seems safer to take the paper, and it's easier in math to be able to mark things. And on reading, it is easier to search when you have the whole passage on paper in front of you instead of having to scroll up and down with your mouse through a big long passage on the screen.
That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's just talk about kind of how you do this, right? So there are basically 3 question types in reading. And the big one is more than half the test is what I just call word search puzzle questions. And the funny trick is that, you know, of course, what you're going to do is the question has words in it that you search the passage for, right? And then once you find those words, you need to go looking 5 lines up and down for other words from the question. So this is the big trick of every multiple choice reading test in the world is there are usually 2 different things in the question that you need to find, and they are often 3 or 4 or 5 lines apart. So let's look at how that happens in action, right? So we've got this question and it says, the passage author makes clear Martha Washington's view that her husband's return to public life was. So we just look at that and say, okay, what do we need to word search for? Well, I could search for husband's return to public life, right? But I can also search for Martha Washington, and that's capitalized, right? So I'd rather search for that. And so I've already copied out the part of the passage you find. Martha Washington appears only once in the passage. So you have to search till you find her. Now, what do we need to look for?
Well, about the return to public life.
Yeah, these words, husband return to public life. And it's probably going to be, like it might be 1 line away, but the trick of the test is often it's 3 or 4 or 5 lines away.
Yep. And it comes down to around 85.
Yeah. So if you go up, you see private life, and that's not what we're looking for. Oh, we're looking for public life. Okay, there's public life. And then, oh, husband return to public life is him going to public life again. Right? So now the question is asking, what is her view of that?
Yeah, it's F.
And it is the paraphrase of not to be avoided is inevitable, right?
Yep.
That's it, right? Is just that it's what did the words say, right? You don't have to understand, you don't have to think about it. You do have to be able to understand that not to be avoided means inevitable, right? But that's it.
Yep.
Right?
That makes sense.
And so that's the game of the test. But of course, that word searching, this is completely unlike anything you do in school, right? This is a skill that has nothing to do with anything you do in school. It's just a game and you have to be good at it, and you'll be kind of bad at word searching until you practice it some. And then the other question types are like main point questions. Well, the trick to a main point question, the reason you don't have to read in detail up front is the answer will always come from the first and last paragraphs and the title. So you don't need to read and understand the passage. You just need to look at the beginning and the end, right? So this question asks, what is the broad general message of the passage? Well, the title is The Reluctant President. There's really only one answer in there about being reluctant. But you look at the first sentence of the passage, it's about his doubts festering when he thinks about the task of being president.
So may have private insecurities, H, right? Sorry.
Yeah, this is deep private insecurities. Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you look back at the last sentence of the passage, well, that was the one we just looked at. His wife thinks it's much too late, but it can't be avoided. So all 3 of these sentences, like the title and each of those sentences, all are going to give you that same answer.
Yep.
right? And that's it, right? And then the other question is vocab and context questions, where they ask what a word means, right? And the trick to those is just simply ignore the word they're asking about and look 5 lines up and down
And it'll
to make
basically,
your own definition.
okay. What would be an
So,
example of that, Bobby?
yeah, let me grab one real quick. Okay, so let's do this. Whoops, right here. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting one. So this question asks what the word fashions means in the passage. Well, if you just looked at the question, right, you
Yeah.
would think that fashions might mean like things
There's,
you wear, right?
Mhm.
Something like that. But I'm going to ignore the word. Like in a paper test, I might even cross the word out. So I can't even look at it because the word, since all 4 of those are different meanings of the word fashions, right? That's going to be a trap. So instead, I go into the passage and I'm going to cross out that word and then look and say, okay, just what word could you put there without necessarily looking at the answers, right? Just like, what could I put there? Well, so this artist takes cotton swabs, toothpicks, bottle caps, and objects, and then they become landscapes and galactic spirals in a sculpture,
Mhm.
right? So there would be, I don't know, like puts together or something,
Yep.
right? So that's the thing we're going to use as a definition. And then you look at those answers.
Initiates?
So that would be like starting it up, right? But it's just like a symbol.
Combines. Oh, I didn't see the
Right.
word combines. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So it has to actually be in there. And also, the other thing is the answer needs to sound good in the sentence, right? So she
Whoa.
combines into landscape, sounds good, right?
Yep.
But she initiates into landscapes would sound weird. And that's it. And
Yeah.
that's it.
Simple,
This
easy
is
peasy.
what's that?
Easy peasy. I mean, you could really read that and just go the objects that she accommodates, that she initiate. I mean, you could, yeah.
And that's the whole trick is that, just like on English, if you go through thinking about what sounds good, it doesn't work, right? And that's the whole strategy. There are 3 question types. You'll be a little slow at it at first because it's a skill you've never used before. You just practice it and you'll get better and better. And eventually time will take care of itself and you won't be running out of time.
All right. Well, guys, this is simple. If you've got questions about the new ACT, reach out to Bobby. He's excellent about answering your questions, sending you sample tests so that your kiddo can take those. And, if you listen to these videos and they're all on our YouTube channel, KristinClark.com, you can hear how to do all these tests.
I tell you what, I mean, especially on reading, I mean, the thing I just said, that's the whole strategy. Like, that's it. If you practice that, you can score in the 30s on reading with practice.
Yep.
But you probably need to take like 6 tests to get
Yep.
there. And that is it. Okay, so next time we'll finish it up by looking at the science section and how it's changed. And that is it. Everybody